Hey there, it's Wayfair here, where delivery and setup are as easy as a few taps on your phone. You're relaxing in an old hammock, scrolling Wayfair's app, when you spot it, a brand new patio set. Next thing you know, Wayfair delivers it right to your patio and sets it up. Oh, you need a new grill too? All right, Wayfair's got you covered. With Wayfair's Room of Choice delivery and fast expert setup on qualifying orders, life gets a little easier. Visit wayfair.com or the Wayfair app.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Campus Killings, Below the Surface, and Killer Communications. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
If you'd like to support Missing Persons and get VIP access to things like ad-free listening, early preview episodes, and bonus content of not only this show, but for every other podcast on the AbJack network of indie podcasts, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcast. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting the show in the process. Your support is greatly appreciated.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together, we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to search for their missing loved ones. In some cases, even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us. So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing.
Tanner Lane Sharp grew up in a small town in Kansas with older sister Sommer and 3 younger siblings in what has been described as a close family. Tanner was somewhat introverted and preferred video games and riding his bike to social clubs and organized sports. He went to a technical college in Colorado for a short time, but dropped out, living with his mom and stepfather, and then with a friend in Texas for a short time. Then in November 2009, he moved in with his sister Sommer and her husband and young kids in Elk Grove, California. He lived with them rent-free for several months. When Sommer asked him to start paying rent, he moved out in early April, taking his things with him. He told Sommer he was moving back to Kansas, and a friend there had lined up a place to stay and a job for him. He texted Sommer about 17 hours later, claiming to be in Kansas, which she knew was geographically impossible. And Tanner did not take his road bike with him, telling his sister he no longer needed it. Tanner was in touch with his sister, grandma, and mom sporadically for the next couple of weeks. His last contact with his mom, Wendy, was on April 25th. He asked her to cancel the cell service she'd provided for him, telling her either he was getting a new phone or he wanted to get away from everyone. The police reports contained both. Tanner's tone during this call seemed happy. Wendy did not cancel the cell service until June, and the information the cell records provide was very important to the investigation. She saw that he had made a number of calls and texts during April and May, and the activity was occurring in Galt, California, about 15 minutes from where Sommer and her family lived. All the numbers were numbers Wendy didn't recognize, and Tanner had no known contacts in Galt. Police were unable to locate persons connected to those numbers. According to the records, Tanner was in Galt when he made the calls. His phone records reflected that at 12:54 p.m. on April 26th, he called his bank, First National, in Kansas, to close his checking account. He told them to donate the $7 balance to charity. That was the last call he made. Tanner was reported missing by his mother, Wendy Gallington, on August 3, 2010. Sommer and Wendy told the Galt police that Tanner was known to be out of contact for months during college, but they always knew where he was. This time was different. They were especially concerned because he had never lived on his own and he was very trusting. The report referred to Tanner as a voluntary missing adult. Wendy obtained Tanner's credit card records. He had used his Capital One Visa to make a lot of charges in April 2010. When he left Sommer's house, he stayed at a hotel. Later, he paid for a week's stay at the Royal Delta Inn in Galt from April 21st to 28th. On the 28th were the last charges at the motel and at an Elk Grove Burger King, which Tanner ate at around 4 or 5 a.m. on many occasions, even though he typically shunned fast food. Wendy received a 60 days past due notice from the credit card account that Tanner had maxed out and had over $2,000 past due on. It's believed he used the card for a cash advance sometime in May, taking out the maximum permissible cash advance. However, none of the managers at the Royal Delta Inn or anyone else at locations where Tanner had shopped or eaten recognized photos of Tanner. Police checked the areas surrounding where the last pings to Tanner's cell phone occurred, but found nothing. They found no sign of Tanner anywhere in the Galt area or anywhere else. In December 2010, a Frank Hogg was walking south on Elliott Road outside Galt when he spied Tanner's vehicle, a Maroon 1994 Saturn. The car was in a creek bed, submerged in 2 or more feet of rushing water under a bridge on Elliott Road a few miles outside of Galt. Frank reported it to the CHP on December 30th, 2010, approximately 7 months after Tanner was reported missing. The car was empty and had been stripped and vandalized, the roof dented by possibly someone jumping on it, the windows and windshield smashed by large boulders that were still inside the car. The license plates were missing and the dashboard VIN removed. When they pulled the car out, the police connected it to the Tanner Sharp missing persons report out of Galt. There were no known personal items in the car, and some engine parts had been stolen. A man who worked on the property where the car was found said it had been there for 5 to 6 months. Detectives searching the area around where the car was found located some large bones that they sent to Dr. Turhan Murad at CSU Chico. Dr. Murad identified the bones as deer bones. Cadaver dogs searching the area around the car did not hit on anything. DNA swabs were collected from Wendy and Sommer for comparison purposes and were entered into CODIS to be searched against profiles from human remains. Tanner was also entered into NamUs on March 10, 2011 as MP 9675. He had 2 NamUs ruleouts by early this year. Sommer also created a Facebook page to raise awareness of Tanner's missing persons case, and he is listed on the California Attorney General's missing persons website. The Galt PD is still the lead agency on the case. A spokesperson told ABC 10 in March of 2026 that it remains on their radar. But we can't ignore the possibility that Tanner does not want to be found. Sommer tells us of conversations with her brother in which he said he wanted to live off the grid, to be a hermit. For a long time after he vanished, the family held on to hope that that is what happened, and Tanner was living his life somewhere. Sommer said that now, though, she and her mother have accepted that Tanner is probably no longer with them. What happened to him, they do not know, but it seems unlikely that he is alive after 16 years, without his car, phone, or access to money. Tanner Sharp's sister, Sommer Lynn Willis, is our guest today. She sat down with Mike Morford to talk about her missing brother's case. That conversation is coming up after a word from our sponsors.
I'm Hannah. I've lost 75 pounds in 20 months with GLP-1s, plus diet and exercise. On Row, I've gone from struggling to run a mile to running farther every day. You can access FDA-approved GLP-1s online. Get the support you need to reach your weight loss goals. Go to row.co/weight to see if you qualify. I'm a paid Row partner. 20% average weight loss in 1 year in non-diabetics with obesity or overweight with a weight-related medical condition versus 3.1% in placebo arm. RX only. To stay informed about serious side effects, go to row.co/safety.
Hi, Summer. Thank you for coming on to talk about your brother Tanner's case with us today.
Hi, Mike.
We're happy to have you here. We're trying to get some updated attention for this case. I know it's something that you've been trying to do, and you're still looking for answers. And we're going to talk about some of the things that have happened in the case and sort of go through what we know, what we don't know. But before we do, can you tell listeners a little bit about Tanner and some of your memories of him and what he's like?
For the most part, he was pretty quiet, a little reserved, I would say. Not really reclusive, but just kind of kept to himself for the most part. He didn't play sports. He wasn't involved in like clubs or anything like that. His main interests were playing video games and riding his bicycle. So that was, I mean, I would say kind of the main idea of like who he was, his personality.
I want to go back on, what was going on in his life when he went missing back in 2010. There were some changes and then some things were, I guess, a little bit different. Can you talk about some of that stuff?
Yes. Yeah, I can definitely do that. So it kind of, I suppose I should kind of go back to about 2008. He was living with our parents, our mom and stepdad in Atwood, about 15 minutes north of Colby, Kansas. And it was an even smaller town. That is where he graduated high school. And then he was living with them from around, I believe it was like 2008, 2009, and maybe part of 2010. And then right after that, he moved in with a friend who lived in Texas. This friend was married with kids, and I think it just didn't really go like as well as he expected. And so he came to our house, and it was kind of with the expectation that he was just going to like visit for a while. Um, but we kind of just ended up letting him stay with us long term. It ended up not being as long as we expected, by the end of it, by the time he left. But yeah, that's kind of what was going on with him. He didn't really have his own place. He was kind of bouncing around a little bit.
And where he was living with you, this was Elk Grove, is that correct?
Yes, Elk Grove, California. It's a suburb of Sacramento.
Okay. Now, during that time, did he have a lot of friends or people that he was hanging around with? And was it in that area where you lived, or was it outside of that area?
Right. Yeah, he's always had at least probably 5 or 6 friends, kind of who he hangs out with, a couple kind of closer friends. But at that time, he those friends that he had were one of them was in Texas, but then mainly his friends were in Kansas still. And he didn't hang out with anybody when he was living with us in California.
Basically, so it sounds like he was just, hanging around the house and not going out a lot?
Yeah, for the most part, he would go with me places sometimes. He always wanted to go with me to the grocery store. He really liked to eat pretty healthy food, so he wanted to help pick out the food that I got. Um, so I think that was part of it, but he probably wanted to get out of the house a little bit too. So pretty much he just went with me places. And I will say he had a car at the time, a Saturn, and his car sat the entire time that he stayed with us. He didn't use his car at all.
So he was pretty much a homebody staying in and not really going out too much.
Yeah, pretty much.
So how was he adjusting to the change and being there and sort of, being someone that's not going out a lot and sort of stuck in?
Right. Um, I mean, I think he had kind of been like that for a while. For like a couple years, he kind of didn't really go out a lot with friends and stuff. So I don't think it was too hard of a transition for him, not hanging out with friends in person. Um, I don't know how it was for him not really going out of the house at all much. He played video games a lot when he stayed with us, and he also slept quite a bit. I think it was just kind of I feel like maybe he was a little depressed at the time. I didn't really talk with him about it at that time. My husband and I had 2 kids, and one of them was, like an infant. So I was kind of busy with them for the most part, and I didn't really like delve into what was going on with him.
So, I mean, that makes sense. Obviously, you've got children and he's an adult. So it comes a time he's living with you. It's extra people in the house. It's using up resources. And I had read that at some point you asked if he would start paying some kind of rent or pitching in, and that didn't happen, or he decided to move out. Can you talk about how that
Yeah.
sort of unfolded?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it was like he moved in with us in November of 2009, actually. He moved in with us in November 2009. And then I think it was like, I want to say January, we told him that he could stay with us pretty much indefinitely without paying rent or anything, if he got a job or started going to school, either one of those things. And we were going to give him some time. We're like, you don't have to, like, this isn't like right away, but just if you start like looking for a job, maybe, going to school, something like that, you're doing something, then you can just stay with us as long as you want. We're not going to charge you rent, etc. He actually had his own room in our house. So he had his own space and everything like that. And we told him, if you're not going to get a job or go to school, you're just going to hang around and not do anything. We would like, I think we asked, I want to say it was $200 a month. So I mean, we tried not to make it too high, but kind of like high enough that it would be an incentive for him to do something, you know?
So it sounds like this was not so much about the money, but more about getting him motivated to sort of get active and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And how did he take that conversation with you? How did he react, and what was his response?
He didn't really he didn't really like it very much. He didn't really respond much to it. He's like, "Oh, okay, whatever." Um, I would say kind of indifferent about it for the most part. He didn't seem uh, he didn't seem like phased by it or anything. So yeah, and kind of hard to say because he just didn't say very much about it.
But did he actually decide he was just going to leave and move out?
Later on he did. Because we brought it up to him. I think it had been like, let's see, this was January, February, March, April. I guess it had been like a few months later. We brought it up to him again. Um, and at that time, my husband's like, "Hey, man, what's the plan? Like, are you wanting to get a job? Are you wanting to go to school? Whatever." And Tanner at that time, he's like, "Actually, I'm going to go to Kansas. I have a friend." Well, this was after some kind of like, kind of pushing from us, like, "Hey, you need to tell us what's going on, what your plan is." Um, and he finally said, "I have a friend in Kansas who's got a job lined up for me, so I'm going back to Kansas." So that was what he told us.
Did you believe that to be the truth?
Yeah, actually, I did. And I think maybe at the time I was just kind of relieved for him to say something because I was getting upset. Like he wasn't telling us anything. He I don't know. He kind of just seemed like he wasn't going to do anything, and I felt bad about like the asking him for money. Like maybe we shouldn't have done that. That type of thing. So it was a little upsetting, but then, he told us that and it was like a relief, like, "Oh, okay, you have a plan. All right, whatever he wants to do, he's an adult, he can do what he wants." But it was just like a relief knowing what he was going to do, because I kind of just like, I was concerned for him.
So how long after that conversation did he actually leave your house?
Um, I want to say I want to say it was like a week or less. It kind of so what happened was I think we talked to him about it like in late March. And then on April 4th, his sister was set to come to our house and hang out with us for a couple days. And it was like right around, I think it was right around Easter, if I remember right. We were going to do some Easter stuff. So she was set to come. And that day, he kind of just like suddenly decided that he was going to leave that day. I mean, looking back at it, I think it's just he didn't want to have to deal with like the, extended family or whatever. Maybe I think he had probably a little bit of social anxiety. So that was my thought process about it. Once I kind of thought about it later, but at the time I thought, what do you, okay, you're leaving right now? Like it just didn't seem like he was very prepared to leave. But yeah, he just kind of gathered all his stuff up, and packed his car and, um, we said goodbye and he left. Like I want to say probably a couple hours before Tavy got there, my husband's sister. Yeah, so he just like left kind of abruptly.
So he took all his stuff, got in his car, and drove presumably to where you thought was back out of state, back to
Right.
Kansas.
Yep. Yep.
Around what date was this again? I'm sorry.
This was April 4th of
Okay.
2010.
And when did you get the sense I know you had a communication again after he left. What was when was that, and what was that communication like?
So it was actually our first communication was only about 15 minutes after he left. I don't know why exactly, but I went into the garage and I saw that he had left his bicycle in our garage. And I was like, oh my gosh, he left his bike here. Like, oh, that's not good, And I called him thinking of surely he'll come back and get it. And he's like, no, I don't need it anymore. It's fine. You can keep it. You guys can keep it. And I remember thinking that was really odd because, he really liked riding his bicycle. And I wouldn't say it was like his thing, but he enjoyed it and he did it quite a bit. So yeah, it was really surprising. But I didn't, it wasn't like alarming. I just thought, okay, well, I guess, maybe he doesn't want to come back for whatever reason. He doesn't want the hassle of taking it. I don't know. So it wasn't alarming at the time. I just thought it was odd.
And then did you speak to him, was it the next day as well?
Yes. So it was about 17 hours, if I recall. It was about 17 hours later that he called me and he said, hey, I'm in Kansas. And at the time, I remember thinking, like, seemingly there's no way that he's in Kansas yet. Because I had done the drive to Kansas myself from Elk Grove. And I remember it taking me about 24 hours total. And this was not staying overnight anywhere. This was like just with stops along the way. And I remember thinking, like, how could you be there so soon? That's like seemingly impossible, you know. But I remember just kind of like brushing it off, like, okay, I don't know, whatever. He like hardly stopped at all. Maybe he stopped only for gas for like 5 minutes and then went on. I don't know what I told myself exactly at the time, but I don't know. I just figured he was telling the truth. Like I did not think he was lying. That didn't cross my mind.
So he is presumably going back there, but you had some question as to whether he had actually could have made it in that time frame. But
Right.
um, when did someone first notice that, okay, he's not where he's supposed to be, he's missing? When did that happen? How did that happen?
So the last time that we heard from him, like on the phone, he called my mom and he spoke with her on the phone April 25th. And he told her that he was getting a new phone and he would call her or text her. Like, don't call or text this phone. I won't have it anymore. I'm getting a new phone. But it was like May, June. I want to say it was probably 2, maybe 3 months before my mom she became really suspicious. Like, he hasn't called us yet. It's been a long time. Um, and what she did, she was paying his phone bill at the time, and she got phone records and looked at the phone records from when he had been calling us and texting us, and she saw that all of the communication was coming from Galt, California, not from Kansas.
Which is a lot closer to where you live than Kansas.
Yes. Yeah, it's only like, I think, like 15 minutes south of us.
Now, did he know anyone there? Did he have any contacts there?
Not as far as I know. Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess at that point now, that's got to raise some alarm that something was not right here. He's out of
Yes.
sight, and he's, your mom looks at these records, and he didn't call where he was supposed to be calling from. So now that seems suspicious. What happened next?
So pretty much like right at that point, it was very alarming. Like, okay, something is going on. He was in California. Is he still in California? Is he in Kansas by now? Obviously he lied to us, like all of us, my mom and my grandma and me, telling us that he was in Kansas when he wasn't. So it was very alarming. And at that point, my mom reported him missing. So yeah, and she reported him missing to the Galt police because that was like the last time that he had made contact with his phone. He was
Did
in
they
Galt.
have any leads early on? Did they have any clues, or were they pretty much behind the 8 ball because it was time had passed?
Yeah, it was pretty much like we didn't get any leads. They were kind of slow about it, but they did eventually like interview some of the places that he had used credit cards. Like for instance, he had gone to Burger King, which was odd in itself because he really liked to eat healthy food. But he had gone there several times, like almost every morning when he was gone in April. And then, like, he went to like Big Lots. He went and he bought a new battery for his car. I can't remember where else he went, but the police basically like interviewed pretty much anybody who was at like all these places that he had been to using his credit card. Yeah, but nobody at that time, nobody even remembered him.
Time had passed, it sounds like you're saying.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that time that he's using that credit card, is that like a debit card, or was it an actual credit card?
It was a credit card.
Okay. Uh,
Mhm.
so there was a little bit of a paper trail from that, but it didn't really help, it doesn't seem, because nobody remembered him. Uh,
Right.
and during this time too, any word on his car? Did anybody see that? Where did they put out like an APB for his car?
No, I don't I don't think they did. Not as far as I know. I do remember them being very like kind of slow about the investigation, not really like super interested because he was an adult. And at the time, there wasn't any kind of like foul play suspected or anything like that. Just thought, well, okay, he decided to go to California or stay in California and he's an adult so he can do whatever he wants to do. So they were kind of just slow about investigating the whole thing.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty sure that they didn't put out an APB for his car. But it was only a few months after he was reported missing. It was in December of 2010 is when his car was actually found. So that might have been why. Like maybe they just didn't have enough time to put out one or something. I don't really know.
And that was found in Galt too, right?
Yes, his car was found in Galt.
Okay, and it was a creek bed, and it was submerged in some kind of rushing water. It doesn't sound like it was a little tiny creek. It sounds like there was some kind of water flow. It was
Yeah.
on a bridge. Did it look like it had been, like, crashed into there, or somebody had ditched it in there to hide it maybe?
So it didn't have any like external damage necessarily. It didn't look like it had been crashed in there. And it wasn't like completely submerged at all because the water was pretty fast running water, but it was only about like 3 feet deep. It was not really deep water. And so the car was pretty visible, really. I don't know that it was visible from the road itself necessarily, but I do know that people saw it. There was at least one person who saw it and did not report it at the time they saw it.
Hmm.
So this person saw it before December, before it was actually like found or located by the police when somebody else reported it.
Was there any indication of how long it had actually been in that spot?
I don't know about that. The police didn't say anything about that. They knew that it had been a little while because the person who saw it first, it was like a ranch hand that saw it. He didn't report it. And they found that out after the fact. But yeah, he didn't report seeing it. And so I think it had been a little while before someone actually reported it.
Hmm. Were they able to find any kind of evidence in there, anything that gave them any clues at all about your brother?
So there was nothing found in the car at all. And it had actually been kind of vandalized and the stuff had been stripped out. Like I think they took the stereo out. Somebody removed the VIN on the front of the car, like the dash of the car, the one that you can readily see. So that was kind of weird. Yeah, so I don't know. Nobody really knows exactly like why it was vandalized or stripped or whatever. But yeah, there was nothing. No, none of his possessions were in the car.
Hmm. So it sounds like that the car could have been, you know, taking the VIN off, throwing it in the creek could be an attempt to hide it because something shady has happened, but it also maybe sounds like it could be a joyride. Somebody stole it and then just ditched it when they were done and maybe wanted to cover their tracks that way too. So doesn't
Yeah,
sound like it led to too many answers, unfortunately. That's
right.
disappointing when you have the paper trail too from the credit card, yet nobody remembered seeing him at the hotel where he stayed. And you have these clues, but none of that is leading to your brother's whereabouts. Uh,
Right.
so I want to go back to this Galt area, just for listeners that aren't familiar with it. What kind of area is that like? Is it very populated? Is it open? Is it a place where someone could move around without necessarily being seen?
It's so the town itself is very small. I'm not sure of the exact population, but it's a really small kind of rural community. Um, like, I mean, it's about 15 minutes south of Sacramento, so it's closer to a big town. But yeah, it's in itself, it's very small, and across the interstate from Galt, there's a bunch of farmland, and that actually is where Tanner's car was found, is across the interstate in Galt.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's just a really small town. I would say it seems to me like if he was driving his car around, that somebody might notice it just because it was such a small town, but also not necessarily because it's next to an interstate. So there were probably strange cars driving around anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
So there's a paper trail in Galt. The car is
Yes,
found near Galt, but no sign of your brother in Galt.
right.
So did police make any progress at all? Were they ever able to find any kind of sightings of him or anything in that area?
No, not at all.
Have they uncovered any clues that maybe said, okay, maybe he, ditched his car and just got a ride out of the area and could be anywhere?
They didn't get any kind of indication like that. Nobody came forward with anything about him. Yeah, and I mean, like you were saying, even the motel that he stayed at, nobody remembered him. So I don't know. I would say, um, like when he was going to Burger King, I remember seeing the timestamp or whatever on the charges, and it was like 4 or 5 in the morning or something like that. So it's possible that he just didn't really like leave the motel when people were awake, and so they just didn't really, like, see him out and about, you know?
Yeah. But interesting also that the people, the hotel, the Burger King, I'm assuming they were all showed photos too, and to
Yeah.
have nobody remember him, seems kind of weird, especially since, he's got so many connections there of activity.
Yeah, it does seem weird. I remember thinking that was odd that nobody remembered him.
And eventually your mom, received a bill, I guess, for the credit card, and it was past
Yes.
due, and I guess he had been just charging so much on it that he, didn't pay it and maxed it out, and she eventually gets the bill for that and realizes that that's what's been happening on the credit card?
Yes. I believe what she said is she got a collections notice on it. So it was some months later, and yeah, he had maxed out the card.
We got all these leads in Galt, but no sign of Tanner and Galt. And I'm curious too. I know some of the clues were trying to look at the cell phone to see, who he could have called.
Right.
If they checked any of the phone numbers that he might have called and talked to any of the people that he may have called, were they able to learn anything about that?
Yeah, they did. I do know that they called. I think they tried calling all of the phone numbers on there. And I think a couple were like dead ends. They didn't either didn't answer or something. But we were told like, yeah, we didn't find any information there. We don't know who it is. Something, something. We do know the very last call he made was to the bank. He had like his money in a bank in Colby, and there was some money in there. I'm not sure of the exact amount, but it wasn't very much. But he told the bank to donate that money.
Like the entirety of it?
Yeah,
Okay.
just whatever was left in his checking account, he told them to donate it.
Well, so that sounds maybe, hopeful that something didn't happen to him, that maybe he sort
Right.
of decided that he just wanted to reset his life or walk away from his life, as opposed to just never contacting the bank and the money just sitting there. So that seems like a ray of hope. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
was he the type of person that you think could just walk off and just start over someplace and say, I just want something different?
So, I mean, the thing is, he didn't seem to me to be like really self sufficient. He had never actually had his own place without living with someone else. He had never lived by himself completely. Um, he was either living with a friend, he lived with a roommate when he went to college. He was living with our parents, he lived with us. He never actually like had his own place. So it's kind of I don't know. I am like I I feel that it's not very likely that he went out and just like started his life over unless he had help from someone else.
Hmm. So it sounds like he needed some kind of support system probably to help pull that off if that's what happened.
I would say so. Yeah.
Uh, now, and I correct me if this is the wrong word, but I seem to remember um, you mentioning at one time that he wanted to live sort of like a hermit lifestyle. Is that accurate?
Yes, he did. He did at some point like talk about that, about
And
like living off the grid or whatever.
okay, so he had that's something that he had mentioned himself before.
Yes, it is.
Hmm. So
Yep.
maybe there's a possibility of that happening. Um,
Yeah.
Is there any kind of official police stance on the case now? Have they ever said publicly or shared with you, privately, maybe something about what they think happened?
No, no, we didn't get any kind of like closure or whatever on the case from the police.
Oh, so it's all this time later, and you're just sort of wondering what happened to him.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
have there ever been any sightings, potential sightings of him anywhere as far as you're aware?
No. No one has ever come forward saying they've seen him.
Okay. Now, do you have a theory, or does your family have a theory about what possibly happened to him?
So after all this time has elapsed, initially we all thought it was pretty probable that he had a friend and this friend helped him like start his life over and maybe like live off the grid or whatever. Or maybe this friend did the same thing. They both just kind of like left their lives possibly and started over. So we kind of thought that for a very long time, but we thought it was really unusual after it'd been several years, and no one like I said, no one reported seeing him. He didn't have any kind of like if he was living off the grid, he was doing a really good job of it because there was no trace of him. And after a long time, I know it was my grandma held on to that uh, until she died. Basically, she just thought that he was he was off somewhere with the help of a friend. But my mom and I, we kind of agreed that we thought either someone basically killed him or he took his own life. So that's kind of like where my mom and I are at.
Hmm. And if that's the case, that brings up another question. Where's his body? How come that's never been found? So kind of leaves,
Right.
doesn't give any answers. I mean, it seems like another possibility for sure, but um, just stick, makes you face more questions more than answers. Had he
Right.
ever threatened self-harm before?
No, as far as I know, he had never actually outright said anything about hurting himself, or suicide or anything like that. Um, I guess the main reason that we suspected that as a possibility is because he did show signs of depression over the last uh, few years or so, I would say. Um, he was playing video games a lot, sleeping an awful lot. I would say he slept probably 12 plus hours a day. He showed signs of depression. Looking back on it, it was like, yeah, he probably was depressed. So that I guess was kind of like our reasoning behind that possibility.
Mm. And you just, unfortunately just nothing to go on, no real avenue to go down as to what really happened.
Right.
And I know you and your family have been sort of active trying to keep his name out there or get, awareness for the case. I know his case was entered into NamUs, and there's
Yes.
DNA profiles, on there so they can be compared against remains if they're found. Um,
Yeah.
how big a deal was that, getting that done at least so, that would help identify him one day possibly?
So for me, it was pretty easy. All I had to do was go down to the Galt police station. I believe my mom, though, I think she was like mailed a kit to give her DNA, like a swab or something like that. So it wasn't a really big deal to do that. If I recall, I think my mom was asked if he had any teeth, like if she had kept any of his baby teeth or whatever when they fell out, so that they could use that DNA. And I I want to say she didn't have any teeth, and that it was just her and our I's DNA that was taken, as far as I know.
Okay. So either way, though, there's something on file that would be useful in comparisons.
Yes.
Hopefully, if any remains are found, they can, uh, get a comparison. Now, since you
Yeah.
both seem to have concluded that he either met with foul play or he could have even taken his own life, have you had any thoughts of having him declared dead, or is that something you want to hold off on doing?
Um, I personally have not had any thoughts of that, and as far as I know, my mom hasn't. She and I talk about Tanner sometimes, and she has not said to me that she wants to declare him dead. So I mean, I think we'd rather just kind of leave it as is. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't like the idea of just like uh, closing it off like that and having a funeral or whatever we might do at that point. I guess just because I still, I kind of hold on to hope that he's still alive.
Hmm. And then having to, if you declared him dead, then that's sort of almost giving up hope, it sounds like.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
was there anything that you think we needed to hit that I didn't ask you about that might be worth talking about?
I would say maybe the only thing is there was a phone number, a friend of his from Colby. I guess he talked to in those phone calls, and he talked to this friend for a couple hours at least. And when this friend was contacted by the police, he claimed that they were just talking about quote unquote stuff. Like he wouldn't go into depth about it. He wasn't very cooperative. So that was kind of a red flag. And I would say that's probably the only thing that I can think of that we didn't touch on.
Have you talked to this friend at all? And, how cooperative was that friend when police talked to him?
So I haven't talked to the friend specifically. I know his name, but I don't really know him, even like from when we were kids. They were friends, but he didn't like come around to our house or anything. But the police did talk with him, and they pretty much indicated that he wasn't very cooperative with questioning. He didn't really give them any information, even though he talked to Tanner at length, at least a couple times.
And just to clarify, was this like leading right up to when he went missing?
This was in April that he talked to. Yeah.
And talked to him a couple times, but from what you understand, the friend just wasn't being very cooperative with police.
Right.
Very frustrating.
Yeah.
Assuming that you can get any kind of answers you can, and maybe this friend had some kind of information.
Right. We thought that maybe Tanner had told this friend like his plans or something, and this friend was sworn to secrecy by Tanner, maybe, and then he wouldn't divulge any information. That was kind of what we suspected.
Mm-hmm. But just nothing one way or the other, unfortunately.
Right.
Well, I know, again, we mentioned his case is anonymous. I know the California Attorney General's missing persons webpage has him featured on there. What other things have been done? Is there any social media or websites that you'd like people to know about where they can learn more about the case or, check out?
Yes. I did an interview with ABC 10 News. And so they have a story on him. If you Google his name, it will come up. It's one of the very first results to come up. So he's on there. The story as I told it is all on there, all the information for the most part. And then I made him a Facebook page. So, there's a Facebook page and it has a lot of pictures. Not a whole lot of info. I didn't really go into depth on the info. I just gave links to name us, and I think I linked the ABC 10 article. And then I know there's a TikTok video on him too. If you go on TikTok and you search Tanner Sharp, it'll come up.
Okay. And your Facebook page you created is called what again?
I think it's Tanner Sharp missing person, I think.
Okay. Well, either way, we'll link the Facebook page in the show notes, so if people want to learn more about it or see if there's anything new, they can click on there and visit it. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing Tanner's story with us and what you've gone through and your family, trying to find answers. And I hope you do, find out what happened, and we'll do our part to just help get his name out there a little bit.
I appreciate that.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, please contact the appropriate authorities.
If you enjoy this podcast, please take a moment to tell your friends about Missing Persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will help us grow and bring these cases to a larger audience. You can also help us by taking a moment to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on. If you want to get early and ad-free access to new episodes of Missing Persons and help support the show in the process, please consider a subscription through Apple Podcasts. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll get early ad-free access to not only this show, but to every other show on the AbJack network of podcasts. You can get started with a free trial by searching for AbJack Entertainment in your Apple app, and we'll include a link in the show notes. If you want to find us on social media, we're on every major platform and on YouTube. Just search for Missing Persons Podcast. We'll include links to all of our social media in our show notes, and you can also visit our website, missingpersonspodcast.com. Finally, if you're in need of a platform to discuss a missing persons case that you're connected to, feel free to reach out to us on our website. We're happy to help. Just a reminder that new episodes of Missing Persons air every other Saturday. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.